their life over because he was like an idiot. You know, he was yeah, and that's, you know, like he in no amount of like kind of just like constantly just like projecting his shame and hatred, self-loathing onto other people would actually exonerate him of any of that. So that's what I thought was kind of cool about his character, was the dimensions of that self-awareness. So, and then there's a lot of the kind of the because it's based off a book too. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's like similar. Like Edward Norton does a really good job of directing a semi-recent movie that I actually saw when it came out, because I was actually pumped up to be like, yes, it's like finally coming out. It's Motherless Brooklyn, which came out 2019, and it was a great. I just felt great cinematic experience too. It's just a very earnest film. No kind of like sleight of hand, no, just very like, you know, we're with this character, you know, you feel for this character, you know, for Edward Norton's character without, and you could argue as a bit of a self-insert, like, well, okay, well, maybe yes, but at the same time, like, you can kind of forgive him for it because it's like written so well, and Jonathan Lethem, I think, did the book, so, I've heard good things, so, soundtrack by Tom York and Flea, I believe, played bass. It's just phenomenal. Just like, you know, daily battles, like daily battles. We ought to do a daily. Something like that. Just very like barren. Just a, you know, kind of a piano and like kind of an upright bass. I think kind of stealing, you know, reminding me of redolent of that classical jazz, well, not classic maybe jazz, but like jazz standards, or the kind of the lounge era of, you know, like soft piano keys and Chet Baker on, you know, trumpet playing, that kind of thing. Almost Blue. That's just the, you know, even though Elvis Costello wrote that song, it's kind of, it has like a almost, at least Chet Baker's iteration of it was very jazzy. You know, and there's other things like I fell in love, you know, like that's another one. Anyway, so I'm talking about music more than I'm talking about movies. I don't know why. There's also another movie came out in 1997 called Life is Beautiful by this Italian director, who also acted in it. Oh, find out his name now. So it's directed by Roberto Benigni, who also starred in it as the lead role. As it's been some years, because Guido is this very kind of witty guy who uses his wit and his ability to think on his feet and to like improvise. He uses that to his own advantage, but not in a sleazy way, not in like a he uses it, although, I mean, his character's not like a perfect saint, but he is earnest too. I keep using that word, but it's so all-encompassing. But he is, you know, he uses it for like sincere goals. You know, he's basically, the gist of it is that I remember growing up with this movie in the periphery, always seeing scenes of it but never understanding it, because I think I was just too young to understand it too, because it was like a, you know, it is a Holocaust focused movie, and I was expecting to go into it when I did watch it for reals only a few years back, I think. I think like when I was expecting it to be like very morbid and depressing, Schindler's List kind of thing, walking into it and be like, is this going to be a Schindler's List type of deal? Am I going to be in tears? But no, it wasn't. It wasn't. Although it did get sad. Spoiler alert. Towards the end, definitely it did. There was a moment, but like I felt like his sadness wasn't, you know, like that. I felt like, I'll get to that in a second. But you know, basically Guido's, you know, it kind of follows his life a little bit before the war. I think he's, trying to win the affection of like a girl, and he's like trying to, and he has a way of like kind of getting by as a waiter, and he's like he has a way of kind of like thinking quick on his feet and kind of like earning a living by kind of if like maybe if waiting doesn't work out, he'll try convincing or cajoling people into kind of keeping him on the crew, and like he's able to kind of survive by doing that. Like that's his way of subsisting, is by doing that. Even though he's like on it's weird because he's doing these jobs that are like don't really require him to be like comedic, but he's using those skills for like to read people and do like he's using that in order to keep those jobs, I think. But yeah, then he falls in love with this girl, the classic boy meets girl, and then they have a son, and the son's name is Guizi, I think, and they basically everything just falls to pieces when the war starts. Obviously, World War II, and this takes place in Italy, so it's obviously Nazi occupied Italy. I'm rusty on my World War II history, but basically, when it must have been early 40s, 41, 42, I guess, and I'm not sure to what extent I know they really Poland, like with the Warsaw Pact and all that, and how it was especially drastic for them and Jewish groups, especially within them. But I think with this, it was, I think, I'm sure there was like also devastating effects for the Jewish diaspora of like Italy as well. So I guess nobody was spared in that sense. And basically with what happens with Guido and his family is they're put in an internment camp. And I'm not sure how much of this is historically accurate, but like the movie does, it's obviously dramatized. It's a movie, creative liberties. So, but they're put in a camp, and one scene that I really love is like when they're first put in the camp, and the Nazi guard is like in German saying like it's like you will be given such and such rations per day. You will be given you will not be able to see your friends. You will be confined to these rooms, and you'll to put work camps. So you'll be confined to horrible work camps to work 12 hours a day. And then Guido starts like translating for his son. His like their group. Well, in Italian for especially for his son. In mind, but like for the rest of the group, he's saying in his native language, he's like, you will be given nice, cozy blankets, and you'll be given. Well, then we're gonna go around. We're gonna give everybody cookies and snacks, and it's gonna be. This isn't verbatim what he said, but it's just like he's gonna go around and I give everyone one hug, and it's like we'll all be playing games and throwing balls and having fun. And it's just like he thinks on his feet in a way that's he's able to kind of salvage it and not make everything so devastating for his son, because he loves him so much, and he's doing it out of a sincere expression of love. And that's why this movie's like so, because he's not doing it for selfish gain, but he's like making sure he's sacrificial in that in the way he's using his talents. And that's what I love about this movie. Yeah, in the ending and why it's so sad is that, and not at the same time, I'm conflicted because he died doing saving his son, knowing he died, and they didn't dwell on it. They didn't show it, which is why it's almost like it's weird that seeing this as a kid, it's something that almost like you could watch as a kid and understand, but at the same time I don't remember if I saw it in full and quite understood it, or if I even saw it in the first place. But I do remember like when I first watched it, at least being like his death was always in the cards, unfortunately, with this high the stakes were. But when Guido died, it was like still sad. Like you're just like, gosh, because like he wanted him to just like be reunited with his son and just like have the benefit. But like when he that his death was also, it wasn't meaningless. It was like, it was, for the greater good of his son, so. Anyway, so that's kind of one of his movies that you don't want to watch all too much. Kind of want to savor them, but there's some of the Lynn Ramsey stuff too. She does like a lot of kind of horror, psychological kind of thick movies. Very, hard to watch too. We need to talk. We need to talk about Kevin. It was probably off the top of my head. I think it came out 2011. So quite a interesting kind of thing going on with it, because it's Tilda Swinton's probably one of my favorite actresses. And she does a really good job of kind of playing this distraught but also flawed mother. Like you feel it goes into the kind of the psychology of oddly enough Ezra Miller is plays in this role, and there's like a lot of kind of weird undertones, kind of like what's happening with him now and like how kind of far gone he's gone today. And I'm not gonna get in the weeds on that, but just figured people have pointed it out too, like how strange it is that it's a story about a school shooter, and just but like it's also so, because I haven't seen the movie since I've first seen it some years back, so and I'm not sure if I want to kind of, and that's not a dig against the movie, it's just kind of like with Come and See, where like I kind of want to save that for like once every like almost like 4, 5, 6 years kind of, just because of how harrowing and how distressing it can be, because like it's hard for me. I'm a sort of person sometimes where I easily kind of like pick up on certain things and I'll start aping or emulating certain aspects of the movies that I watch, whether I think about it or not. So like kind of like if I watch the TV show Mindhunter, I'll be kind of like in a true crime kind of criminal psychology kind of mode and I'll be like, I wonder what being an FBI agent will be like, and I'll start thinking about that. But also probably gets an honorable mention too, Mindhunter, really great. All 3 seasons too. Was there all 3 seasons? I think there's 2 seasons. I don't know if Netflix, to their shame, they should be shamed for not picking up on another one ASAP, because somehow something like, I can't remember the name of it, these other crappy kind of CW-esque kind of teen dramas get millions of seasons. But anyway, so yeah, Lynn Ramsey, yeah, we need to talk about. Kevin was like so unsettling in the sense that talked about kind of the burden of responsibility and like the fact of being a mother of somebody that goes out and does something so horrendous, like shooting up with a bow and arrow, killing all these kids at a school, and like the way she showed it and the way that didn't show it, and also kind of just alluded to it, and then showing like confession tapes and all that, and the things leading up to it, like her and her husband taking him out to like like the prize bow and arrow and all the things of things that she felt that she might have had taken apart in, like yelling at him for like destroying her artworks and stuff, and like that kind of thing, like stuck with her. And it's just like you feel like yeah, it's just like, and like how she beat herself up for it too, like, and things like little things like how she like manifestations of his psychopathy as a young person, or sociopathy, and like different different disorders and stuff that he kind of hinted at early on, and and her being like, darn it, why didn't I do anything? So that was I thought that was very, I think it was prolific. I think it was like showing like kind of like what could happen really, in a similar way that Ex Machina is really great at doing that too. Alex Garland is like creating a sort of scenario of like, oh, this is something that could happen, very near future, like something like maybe like some Elon Musk corporation or something. But yeah. Check this. Anyway, so sorry, the battery died in the middle of me talking, but I think I was talking about Tape by Richard Linklater in general. I hope it didn't skip me, because I was discussing parts about Slacker that I liked. But anyway, that is on the list, so just definitely watch it if you haven't already. Anyway, so with Tape, he does a really great job, with like minimalist kind of play atmosphere of it, with a hotel room, the tape, the titular tape of what happened on, very, it's like, it's so much tension in the way it builds that, and like the acting on, Uma Thurman, Ethan Hawke, and Robert Sean Leonard, who's just, like phenomenal. Just like the amount of anticipation that all it's leading up to is like happening, and towards, I'm not gonna spoil it because it's that good. But yeah, like what it shows what you can do with so little. In a way, it kind of reminds me of what Lars von Trier did with Dogville, which I'm in the middle of watching. Not the middle, but I've just started it recently, and I've started so recently that I've literally just, I think I'm like not even half an hour into it, but that kind of like stage setup is something that I really like what he did in that kind of avant-garde kind of production with the, just relying off kind of the inherent talent of the actors and actresses that, their interactions together kind of fuse and create something interesting. That doesn't need a lot of bombastic, it doesn't need a lot of like flamboyant, exaggerated, elaborate set designs, and although sometimes that works in a Christopher Nolan film, I actually do very much enjoy some of his work. I just have some difficulty accepting some of it on a kind of an idea level of like what, certain questionable things. Like I love Interstellar, for example. It's just like it's such a a cinematic achievement. Obviously, it's like a historically so, and I think like it deserves that kind of status. But I just, as far as like the writing goes, it's a little bit wonky. So, as are some of his other stuff, like Tenet. I really, really want to like Tenet. I might have mentioned this before, but it's so hard, not just on a dialogue, like kind of diegetic thing of, not hearing what the characters are thinking or, anything like that. It's almost like it was purposely trying to create this scenario that's so abstruse and so convoluted that you're exhausted trying to keep up with it, and you have to watch a million different YouTube videos or videos summarizing and reading the plot over and over and over again. It's just like to the point where it's like like you're seeing all these different things unfolding at the same time, and it's like, oh, this is happening backwards, and this happens on this person, and that was actually me in the past, and that person was them in the future, and it's just like, and then finally when it goes down to it, like this little thing, it was just, oh, that it was me all along or something. It's just like, okay, I just didn't, and yeah, maybe I should have rewatched it, but I was so exhausted by it that I was just like, I don't know. I love Memento. I'll give him that. Following. Even movies that he didn't write, like Insomnia, stuff like that, which was based off a novel. But anyway, moving on. So yeah, The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick and some of the other Malick stuff. I do genuinely like both The Tree of Life and Days of Heaven. I haven't seen some of his other stuff. I do know he had another one with Christian Bale called King of Cups that was like kind of mixed reviews. But there was also, I think, another one with Rooney Mara, and I think who I'm trying to watch like pretty much every single movie I can find of her. I can't really figure out like what exactly. But I think it was her, Ryan Gosling, Song to Song, I think it was called, semi-recently. But I don't quite know if that kind of got like what kind of reviews that got. Either way, I'd like to watch more of his stuff, regardless of the kind of the weird or the contentious backlash he gets. But yeah, definitely a smart, educated director. I think he's from the Midwest. I think he went to school for philosophy first, and actually translated Heidegger from German to English, I believe. So yeah, definitely shows in his movies too. Like there's a lot to do with time and how it unfolds, and the Tree of Life is just it has so much. It just lets it space that lets it unfold, and there's like this kind of unifying event happening that kind of goes. It's so ambitious time wise that it like goes all the way back to like you can see dinosaurs and like a meteor kind of like coming in bound towards Earth, and it's just so like like that. It's just like and then the very beautiful music by I think it's a Polish Zibro, I think. I can't remember his name. Korski. It was the same guy, the same composer who did Krzysztof Kieslowski stuff, which I do like as well, like the the whole Color trilogy, I think, which also featured a young Julie Delpy in it as well. But yeah, his Terrence Malick stuff kind of reminds me of that too. That the way it unfolds is just very like and then the voiceover, and also kind of the use of like the voiceover with flashbacks and like like the way of grace, the way of life, and kind of just letting it. I guess it's showing kind of the inevitability of time, and why the mid 20th century. I guess 1950s. I think it's set. With Brad Pitt. Like he isn't pretty good in this. He doesn't chew the scenery as much as he does, say, in like. I felt like he did that a little bit too much in 12 Monkeys, which I've yet to see the whole movie. I've just seen scenes of it, but I think like he was trying a little bit too much to be zany, which I don't think for Brad Pitt that's actually hard, because he's just so kind of like a normal guy, I think, but naturally, and that's fine. You can be a normal guy. You don't not everyone has to be Daniel Day-Lewis. You can be cast as a normal guy. With the arc that just goes into even though in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button I genuinely had problems with that because refer to the said million different video essays on it saying like it's maybe not but like all the different kind of video essays on YouTube about how it's very similar eerily to Forrest Gump because it's actually written by the same screenwriter, so take a look into that. But anyway, but that's the point. Tree of Life, what I really liked about it was that despite all these things, despite how the heavy use of like the voiceover almost to exhaustion a little bit, I think all these scenes of like kind of, it almost seems like a bunch of vignettes thrown together, but it's almost like Kierkegaard said about life being understood. It must be lived forward but understood backward, kind of like that, where it's almost like a soul looking back on life, like and I said, I think I was mentioning the arbitrariness of it being in the set in such and such a time as opposed to present day, probably because that clashes, because in existentialism that's basically the precept, I guess, like being thrust into the world or thrown into the world, and how we wrestle with that time, and like we didn't choose the day or the hour that we're born. We're just kind of thrown into it. So I think that that movie perfectly expresses that in hindsight. But I think it's one of those things you have to live a little bit more, like kind of like with Synecdoche, New York. You kind of have to see it once or twice or three times, a little bit more, and to live more too. Like you come back to it after living for a few years, 5, 10, 15 years. And you learn from it too. So you learn from your own life. You assess. You take stock and like analyze what happened. What went what went wrong, I guess. But like what I guess happened on its own as it unfolded. So at its natural state or natural pace. So that's it's one of those things you have to look back at, so kind of. So anyway, I don't know if I forgot to mention Enter the Void by it's right, Gaspar Noé. Yeah, but really intriguing because I was had a my, I guess, partially my interest in psychedelics, semi-recent interest, I guess, and then it kind of faded away, but that kind of spurred me to watch the movie, and just the interest in kind of like DMT and like what would happen. It's almost like a fly on the wall, like showing the death of this young guy while he's in Tokyo, and it's just like so gritty, and it's just like, I'll say, like, people have, I guess, described knows, and he did Irreversible with, like, I think Vincent Cassel, and I think Monica Bellucci, but like he did with that, there was, I think, a similar kind of like a use of like strong classical music, dramatic music in the backdrop, and like these very kind of like fly on the wall, kind of almost heavenly views into what's going on. And people describe like Gaspar Noé as making them feel more alive, like this weird thing of height, the senses, and like what's going on, and like the sexuality of like the different characters is like you feel that kind of thing, and like the both the most euphoric aspects and both the most dreadful aspects, as both like painful suffering. So that's what I did feel with Enter the Void, but I also felt empty again. Like it's like it's so, I felt like there was no, seeing that it's taking place after the soul leaves the body, after the trip, and the exposition was a little bit on the nose, like the whole the drug is like wouldn't DMT be the ultimate trip? Like if dying would be the ultimate trip because your brain, one of the characters was saying, really good, I think his name's Cyril Roy, kind of a non-actor kind of. A lot of these people in the movie, which I respect him for, aside from like Paz de la Huerta, who's a very strange character in herself in real life. Just not to not saying anything wrong. I'm just saying she's a very interesting person. Just judging from the Justin Theroux thing where she was like just walked in on him and was like talking about Scientology or whatever. And she was like a member or is a member. I'm not sure, but no judgmental there. Just saying. Anyway, but yeah, I think the only thing with the Enter the Void I have problems with it. It's almost like it's too focusing on the seedy underbelly of like ourselves and the psyche, and it's like it's all just the angst, it's all like the ugliness, it's all like the weird Freudian kind of miasma fluid that's all like icky, and it's just like I think there's beauty too. I think there's beauty, but like even the things that are beautiful, that seem beautiful at first, like his relationship with his sister. Like I was like, oh, this is gonna get weird and Freudian. They're gonna she's gonna start doing some weird stuff to him, and she did, and that's what I thought was a little bit wacky. I just think, I think it's like can't there just be a beautiful moment between does everything have to be perverted? Because I'm not, it's not like I'm saying like, well, you view the world with a rose-colored lens. It's like, well, maybe a little bit, but I think. I get that there's a seediness to everything, that everybody's done wrong. Everybody's, we're all, imperfect, But at the same time, it doesn't need to be kind of like, I feel like it's like kind of like rubbing it in a little bit too much. So that's just my take, though. Let's try to go through it. Okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to roll through this because, anyway, All That Jazz, directed by Bob Fosse. Not actually know too much about him, but I do know that this was one of those movies that kind of showed up on Criterion Collection stuff a lot too, along with Harold Pinter stuff. 2 in 1 stone. See, Harold Pinter. Like I've only seen The Birthday Party, The Go-Between. The Go-Between is a pretty interesting movie case into kind of like the English kind of 1920s era kind of the upper class. There's a similar thing going on with D.H. Lawrence, like the upper class, starkly juxtaposed against this the free going, the free spirited, more independent kind of lower class, but they're always like looked down upon, and kind of that go between thing was like an affair that the lady was having, this like a attractive upper, like I said, aristocratic, I think, British lady that she's caught in the act, I guess. And the go-between is just a little boy that's he's sent to like basically just run messages and run errands pretty much. But yeah, the that I really liked. The soundtrack by Michel Legrand was just like one of my favorite soundtracks ever. Like the foreboding kind of piano chords on that, very like moving. The birthday party was a little bit weirder, almost Kafkaesque. It did go into that surreal realm a little bit too much, where things just get weird, and I'm not really sure what exactly he's trying to be said, but I do appreciate it for Ian Holm, obviously. But yeah, that, and I have it, The Comfort of Strangers. But yeah, the again, Criterion Collection, a lot of these, they did an edit, a really great edit of just the trailer for the tease of like the Harold Pinter collection, I guess, that they're releasing. And it was just like, it was just like the, like it got me, all the lines, like the, that that the one-liners that you imagine kind of rehearsing in your head, like he seems privy to, or to have a an insight into like what into certain ugly aspects, I guess, of like of the human psyche as well. So moving on. Whiplash, I do know that Damien Chazelle's okay, moving on. Movies I do like. Lost in Translation, I thought was really great at honing in subtlety as, like playing with tension. There was a lot of like, as I remember, again, I kind of feel bad about giving Bill Murray a hard time as a in Hollywood, because it's like, oh yeah, he's had his run, and he's been goofing around for all these years in SNL, and then played in all these kind of like kind of the aforementioned kind of slobs versus snobs, lower brow comedies like Stripes. I never found Stripes funny. I just like even when as far back as when I was like a kid, kind of just on the surface level interested in the military kind of things, like I didn't find it funny. Just a different generational thing too, I guess. It's boomers versus millennials, because I'm a millennial. But I didn't really find a lot of his different stuff funny, but I do appreciate his at least attempt to kind of foray to dramatic acting, and he does. I think he does. He fares well in Wes Anderson, and like I just said with Sofia Coppola's. I think this is one that he did with collaboration he did with Coppola, but yeah, I think this is actually one of, I think it's, I don't know if it's Scarlett Johansson's, obviously not at first because she was in 90s, she was a child actress, but this is like her kind of her thing into serious acting as well, and like there's something about, I guess, like the theme of, the titular theme of the Lost in Translation, that, like the opening scene with, Bill Murray, doing this ad for like some type of alcohol beverage, and, like all of them, have like strong Japanese accents, obviously, because it takes place in Japan, obviously, and he can't understand what anybody's saying, and, he's, I just thought it was funny. But like that theme of kind of not being able to, so there's that, and it might. The only thing is, like, I thought, like, the themes of it, like, I couldn't really figure out what it was trying to get at, because she, obviously her character was like kind of in some kind of like existential disquietude. She didn't really know what direction to take in life, as most people in their late teens, early 20s, or college students, like, don't really know, and that I still don't really know personally. But yeah, there's this kind of but I don't quite know what exactly the movie is trying to say, because it's like, like towards the end they don't really, they obviously kind of reciprocate that it was a platonic thing, and it was just like, she liked him, he obviously was attracted to her in some way, I guess, but and they both kind of reciprocated that. But I guess I'm not really sure what it was. Like, I think there was, like, the famous thing of, like, what he whispered in her ear was actually revealed, but I actually don't remember. But, yeah, I think it's just, I guess if you don't really think, if you come in not making your mind up, with an open mind, I think this movie can definitely be, impactful in some ways. I think I like, on its own terms, I think it's a pretty high quality movie, so. No. Yeah, stuff with the Coen brothers, anything by the Coen brothers, really. I'm slowly working through their filmography. There's yet to be their newer stuff, like, I haven't, aside from Hail Caesar, I haven't seen, like, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, I think it's called. I think that's the latest. Or True Grit. I actually didn't know it was a Coen Brothers movie until semi-recently. I was like, I kept hearing about this movie, but, like, that's, it was under Jason Lee, I think. True Grit. But, yeah, I never saw it. But, No Country for Old Men, obviously, is, like, it's probably one of their best known ones, I guess, off the top of my head. And yeah, I didn't really quite, and then having recently read Cormac McCarthy's novel for it, which is only written a couple of years before, so kind of interesting that you only see couple year gaps between some movies. It's like, and when the books are released, it's kind of interesting. That's a topic for a different day, though. But yeah, I think No Country for Old Men was something that had a really good kind of hitting, like, striking lightning, or just finding, the right castmate as the right kind that was able, and the right script, the right book material was just genius. McCarthy's such a great writer, just like effortless, anything that he writes, it's an instant kind of, and I'm not just saying that just because a bunch of people say it, but just because, the vastness of his intellect is clear. And, like this, a lot of people kind of, especially kind of some older folk might, or I've heard people, call it nihilistic, and just, well, it's brazenly nihilistic, and, it doesn't have any, people don't, nothing happens. Like, people just die. Like, the good people die, everybody dies. Like, even, like, the people that didn't have anything to do with it. And that's basically that's the point of the movie. Like, it's not, I don't think McCarthy preaches nihilism. I did a review of The Road, where weirdly enough, at the end of the novel, like, everything kind of, spoiler alert, like, turns out fine. So, that's kind of, and I'm not saying that necessarily is totally contradictory. Because when you write, again, you can also disappear into different points of view, and you can kind of swim around inside and take on whatever you want, whereas, like, directly in real life, it's, like, kind of hard to immediately hold two contradictory ideologies. But I think in film, too, it's, like, a similar thing where you can kind of, live out, and you can play a character that's very horrible and narcissistic, but not take on those attributes in real life. Obviously, Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh, with that intentionally kind of hard to place foreign, ethnicity kind of thing going on with the name. It's Anton Chigurh, like, makes no sense if you hear it. But, like, his ability to kind of be this brutal guy, who leaves everything up to chance and to fate, at this roll of a coin, like, it's like, got it. It's like, you've been getting a shot, like, ever since you, like, like, to the guy in the gas station. He's just like, totally just unfazed. He's just like, I don't know what you mean. It's like, you're the death, aren't you? It's like, just got it. But yeah, he's got just like, total, like, the way, Chigurh is just totally, like, unfazed and unaffected by what's going on. Like, he'll just get shot in the leg. It'll just be like, I just think, like, how he's just rolling through life, just kind of this, like, he's almost a cartoon villain in some sense, in the sense that he's like, how does he just kill these people? Like, so, like, where did he get training? Like, what does he do? Like, what is this guy, the ultimate badass or something? Can't remember his the name of the movie, but John Josh Brolin's character in the movie says. But yeah, it's like, it's almost cartoonish in the sense that Chigurh doesn't seem like a real person, but, like, in the same way he almost does. Like, he seems like the combination of, like, every like, worst like, kind of, like, every personality trait of, like, I guess, like, it's called, like, the kind of the diabolical 3, I guess, like, the personality traits and psychology of, like, having, something dark triad, I think it is. It's like, I guess you might find Machiavelli might have one of those pieces, but, like, you find, like, that mixed with yeah, I don't know exactly, but it's interesting to see, but that how the nihilistic thing is, like, if anything, I think it's, like, almost a cautionary tale of, like, being like, these are the ugly things that nihilism can bring. It's like the self-interest of Llewellyn Moss. He could have just, like, instantly, he could have just stopped caring about the money, dropped the bag somewhere, and just, like, but he had to keep, like a gambler, he had to keep gambling his chances, and his chances, and then obviously Chigurh, he himself, spoiler alert, got, basically almost dies / probably might die near the end. It's kind of left on the air, I think. Again, left to the like, chance. Like, that's why it's so great. But like, Chigurh, like, gets in a car wreck near the end because of the fact that somebody else is speeding. Like, even when you enter the road, like, he wasn't even in a gunfight, but even if you enter on the road, you're dealing with the whims of the universe, and, like, you don't know what is gonna unfold. Like, you don't know what direction some guy's gonna go in an intersection. You don't know what direction somebody's gonna take in a gunfight. But in the gunfight, he had some, like, control, because he was, like, this weird Nietzschean Ubermensch that just, like, a warped version, obviously, but because Nietzsche was more of, like, the artistic variety of what could happen, like Goethe or something. Not Napoleon, as many people believed. Anyway, enough kind of apologists for philosophers that died 120 years ago. Anyway, but yeah, No Country for Old Men. On the note of Philip Seymour Hoffman, there's also Love, Liza. I believe Todd Luizzo directed, and the only thing I actually know him from is as an acting role from, I believe, High Fidelity, and that's one that the one that I know off the top of my head. But he did a really good job with Love, Liza. It is, you see, it's almost like one kind of phase, like, not phase, but like a kind of one tone consistently through the movie, with Philip Seymour Hoffman, tragically receives the news that his wife commits suicide, and you never see what happens or how it happens, but, like, it says in the in the suicide note, like, you don't actually know until the end of the movie, and he reads it out loud, and like, he finally, like, all that culmination of, like, all this stuff happening in the movie. But it is very on the end of being a little bit slow, but there's a purpose to that, I think. And like when he finds out and he's processing all this grief, and then he goes through, not like I guess the classic. It's easy to kind of like name drop the whole like Kubler-Ross grieving method, 5 stages of grief, but I don't know how much like how much veracity there is to that. I've actually made a note to read that in its entirety to kind of get my idea, because I've heard so many like hot takes on it, like not like a full, not from the mouth, not from the horse's mouth. So but yeah, I think like he does go through a bit of that, like denial, like trying, huffing paint, spray paint, and just like buying these, like freaking out, like just buying these model airplanes and just flying them around, and just he finds a new friend that kind of finds, that has an affinity for model airplanes too, and goes to this convention of some sort. And yeah, I don't mean to laugh to take it, to make light of it, but it was like he was so, his character was just so like, like, but he was obviously like kind of taking his mind off of it, because like that's like, what else can you do? So he kind of just takes his mind off trying anything and everything. And yeah, I think there was a lot of like fear and like like insecurity, like, or like maybe like he felt that he wasn't ready to take on so he keeps kind of running away from the letter, and I think at one point he considers destroying it, and then finally he reads it at the end of the movie, and it's like very, very sad, obviously. But yeah, kind of remind me, it was a little bit almost in a sense, because part of me, what actually influenced me to, or inspired me to watch this, was probably Synecdoche, New York, and other Kaufman stuff. But like his acting in that was so just like it ranged from subtle kind of like almost mumbling, and then just like at times to just like just heightened, just impassioned speeches, and like I just thought it was like his range in that was just so great. And that kind of reminded me like his dealing with like health and kind of illness and death maybe, and that kind of reminded me of his in Synecdoche, New York. So which is probably my favorite movie of all time. So so moving on, some of the stuff by Ingmar Bergman. Like I reached, like, to my great shame, I finally watched Wild Strawberries like a few weeks ago, and I really love that kind of there's like a psychoanalytic thing to a lot of Bergman stuff, especially like in the 60s, I think, late 50s, early 60s, with well, actually Persona came out 67, right, or 66. So anything during like that, especially, but like Bergman as a whole kind of has like kind of that psychoanalytic temperament, kind of, or is very interested in kind of the psyche and the deep, the things beyond the persona that we put on, like the things that beyond, like, once we lose control of that, like in Persona, why that's such a brilliant movie, why I've got to rewatch it, is because there's so many layers to, the nurse, Ina, I think, or is it Elizabeth is the name of the singer, or I think she's a singer, kind of a celebrity status, that she's going into the care of, there's a kind of a, it's like psychiatric care, under this very kind of like very dutiful, like bubbly nurse, played by the late Anderson, sorry, not Harriet. Was it not Harriet Anderson? But But she did a really good job. Swedish actress, obviously. She was also co-starred in many of other Bergman's films as well, of which I'm slowly trying to move my way through. But yeah, she, I think she was in Seventh Seal as well. And there was a lot of, in Persona, there was a lot of, like, she was putting on this face, and as I think, was she had to, because she was in taking care of her patients, and then finally like the mask slips, and then she can't like differentiate between her after having these very long confessional talks where she just kind of just bursts out and just breaks down, and she starts telling her, not without the help of imbibing some wine or getting a little bit drunk, so that lets her kind of facilitates and kind of breaking her down, these pretense I guess she puts up, a lot of us put up, so she just starts letting it out, and then in front of her, and then can't really, and then throughout the rest of the movie, it's like this dark kind of thing of her not being able to retain her psyche from down in the shadow, I guess, in the Jungian shadow, shows up. So yeah, that is a similar thing. It kind of happens for the main character of Wild Strawberries. I think it has a lot to do with memory. I guess I haven't fomented on it enough to have an adequate opinion. Actually, caution to all of this, I actually don't really have an adequate, my opinion technically isn't valid on anything. That's why I don't feel good about rating stuff, though I don't harbor any ill will toward anybody who does. I just don't really think my opinion, just take it for what it is, basically, just a guy talking in front of a camera, awkwardly. But I think I just leave it up to you to kind of think of what things are, but at the end of the day, I will offer my 2 cents, but just don't take it for anything more than it is, because I obviously a lot of this kind of resuscitates, like it's a lot of anything with like meditation, for example, or or practicing an instrument, or it's like it's the repetition that counts. So if you obviously this requires me just rewatching like the books too, like just rereading or just reassessing them down the line, which I'm quite bad at. I'm bad at rereading and rewatching things, because I feel like once I've spent the time and I've allocated the time toward doing it, I feel like a tension of like, well, I gotta read more stuff just to kind of get on the ball, but I've also just bad at trying to, I guess, kind of claim the magic I guess I once had of reading a novel for the first time too. So it's like part of me is like, why even bother? But yeah, it's okay. So more honorary mentions, probably like Apocalypse Now. Francis Ford Coppola, obviously, again, one of those top 10 movies that you must see, but I actually did partially do it just for that, but also because it's such a, just potent movie. It's like it just goes, especially with the director's cut, I think, with it just like going, it's just kind of like a fly in the wall. You're just with Martin Sheen's character, who's just kind of like trying to get this captain, Colonel Kurtz, trying to get, slowly moves away. And I didn't realize it was actually based off of Joseph Conrad's novel till semi-recently, maybe a year or two back. Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. I might review it here. Well, I probably should, because I haven't done any Conrad yet, even though I've read, I think, 2 or 3 of his books. It's Lord Jim, and Heart of Darkness. But I've got to read more of it, because I feel bad because I didn't quite assimilate what Heart of Darkness was about, even though it was a comparatively quick read. I think it's a short story. It's a novella, I think. So, but yeah, it's pretty much the same kind of arc of them trying to reclaim or trying to convince this military kind of man of high military status to come back out, out of the indigenous area that they are, and try to come back home. But they're kind of like so far gone. So a similar thing is like happening with Apocalypse Now with Marlon Brando's does despite the what I've heard of the very the difficult the tons of difficulty they had on set of trying to get Brando to kind of agree, and Coppola had trying to get him to convince Brando to lose weight, and to have a certain criterion of like what he had, like you should lose at least a few, at least 20 pounds, I think, and he was like, no, not gonna do it. But that's part of what makes Brando, I think, like the kind of legacy of refusing to capitulate. And I'm not trying to joke around too much, because like he obviously suffered some like with I think like some kind of angst and anxiety / depression. So I think like to get and with addiction and stuff like that, he suffered like clearly. I've seen like a decent amount of interviews with like one in the late 80s, I think he did with Jamie Chung, I think I want to say her name, on I think it was like a 60-minute interview, and he like is quite introspective and like knowledgeable of like the decisions he made in his life. And he was like, yeah, I gained so much weight, and it's like it's not because I was trying to offend anyone or be just purposely trying to do that. It was just because I was so sick of the image that I had of this kind of macho guy. He didn't say this word for word, but he was just so sick of this kind of like the limelight of the the pressure to do this or to do X, Y, and to keep up this image, to keep up kind of a fabricated image of himself. Like he was sick of that. And he was like, actors are just they're like how like they don't deserve it nearly the amount of the credit they get. Like they should it's like a musician performing. Concert pianist should get more. Concert musician should probably get more accolades than I do. So he's like, that was pretty interesting. But yeah, not to say that he was perfect. Obviously, he wasn't. But like that in Apocalypse Now, like the way he, is also very like it's like he was you're nothing. You're a clerk. You're here to collect a check. Just the very kind of resigned. Just like you can tell, like just like so. But there's something like that because of the clash. I can sense there's like this weird thing where it's like the intent. Like I think it's like something we all have deep down is like this tendency for us to appeal to our own ego, or like our own, not ego, but just our own vision of what we want out of a movie or out of a project and anything. And the director, the other people, the subject object, I guess you could call it, they're the others kind of desire to maybe come from a different avenue of like, well, I just want to get, maybe Coppola's thing was, I just want to get the best possible take out of everybody. And I want, I want us to achieve our goals, healthily, obviously, but, I want us to all be at our best, I guess. And then Brando is like, just like the individual, like, and then maybe Coppola is maybe more the collective kind of thing, but I'm not sure what exactly to say about that, because it's like part of me feels like I just want to, the authentic side wants to just not capitulate, but I also know that if I do get over that capitulation sense of me wanting to be just a loner, I can actually, in the utilitarian sense, maybe I can actually kind of help everybody else out a little bit by being a little bit easier to work with, or a little bit. So like, yeah, I can get where he's coming from. But yeah, the Dustin Hoffman in that movie too, like not Dustin Hoffman, I'm sorry, Dennis Hopper. I get them mixed up all the time, even though they're totally different actors. Dennis Hopper. His character in that, just like the zany, just like he's the poet warrior in like the strongest sense. Like 1 second he'll like take you and like he'll say like he won't say anything to you. It's like you walk by him and you'll say hi, he won't say anything to you, and then the next second he'll just take you out of nowhere and he'll be like, did you know that if is middle word in life? Yeah, there's like it's frenetic, drug-addled performance. I don't know if he was on drugs, but he was supposed to be playing someone who was like just tripping, I guess. From either due to the heat and humidity, or if it's just the whole crowd mania, or maybe just because he actually had access to drugs. I'm not sure, but I don't want to make any official statement. But yeah, that whole scene is genius. The writing is just so great. Like how like the amount of like explanatory kind of like, oh, like like he's like, oh, the heads, man, he's like he goes too far sometimes, and he's the first to admit it. Like that kind of the amount of like denial that he has to go through to explain and to validate what Colonel Kurtz has done. Like he's murdered people, like he's gone too far, clearly he's like but and they're so parochial and so close together, like once you get that kind of mindset, there's just something weird about that, like about the deification of that not only his character, but like what you might find in real life too, of like certain It could do something to do with a little bit, I don't know, maybe anthropology's right. Like maybe, I think there is like some, I can't remember, it was like there was a French anthropologist, I believe, who went down to an indigenous species that were called to be like the most violent species of all, and they were like trying to get them, and they basically kind of, I think they either fudged the numbers or they kind of selectively did something, but they got, I just remember hearing Steven Pinker and The Blank Slate talking about it, but I just thought it was pretty interesting, but I really researched on what happened, because I think it was something pretty profound, but I can't quite remember what. Anyway, okay, continuing with these lists of films, I do have a faint headache, but the show must go on, as this has probably been, you probably have inferred that this has taken place over the course of days, because of the change of clothing, but slowly I'm working my way through this, I swear. But I also don't want to seem like I'm slogging my way through it, like, but it is something that is a little bit boring, I guess, that when I get down to it, but I do genuinely like these movies. I just set myself up for disaster, like I usually kind of do, by making such a big list, and I didn't know it would be this hard to get through, so, anyway, I think I mentioned movies on here, like, I think I mentioned American History X in both my problem, and I think I related that to 25th Hour, and how it kind of had a similar narrative, in that it did seem a little bit like both were very high in kind of the dramatic, almost like theatrical, like in the classical, like there's like a lot of kind of drama, like a blood on your hands kind of Greek tragedy to a lot of these, to some 90s movies in the early 2000s, like similar like that. I haven't seen a lot of Spike Lee's other stuff. I've yet to see Do the Right Thing, which I've heard good things about, and as I understand it's more of a comedy, but yeah, moving on. Primal Fear, that's another Edward Norton one that I really like. I do like, again, spoiler alert, but I'm going to actually refrain from doing the spoiler because it's a spoiler, kind of. And I feel, even though it is like one of those movies that if you do spoil it, kind of like Fight Club, or what's another one? Maybe something like The Machinist, I guess. Machinist always reminded me a bit of Fight Club, kind of. It had a similar vibe, I suppose. But the thing with Primal Fear is that even though, for me, I think I remember watching it, like a YouTube video clip of, the kind of end scene, stupidly enough, before watching it, and it actually didn't impact too much, but that is just coming from my point of view, I guess, because the way, like the breadth of, I guess, Norton and Richard Gere's performance in that kind of, surmount and keep you on your feet enough, at least in my experience, to the point where your suspicions about, like, like the end of the, like spoiling and all that, kind of felt like I was watching it for the first time, which I guess I was, in a sense, sans the first, the last scene. So, yeah, moving on. So, I think I mentioned The Truman Show too. Peter Weir. He's done, like, he comes from, like, I guess, the Australian background, I think, and I think he was a part of the New Wave, Australian New Wave, which, had movies like Mad Max. I don't know if Peter Weir, I don't think he did that, or was involved with it, but I do know that he did do Gallipoli, which is more of a war movie, came out in the early 80s. I remember actually watching that as a kid and just being really shocked by the end, seeing, how, the horrifying it is, just being sent, just to go over the line, and, whether you like it or not, like, an order is an order, like, it just, how, no matter how irrational and stupid that order is, like, and it's also one of the few Mel Gibson movies that actually isn't kind of blatantly on the nose, kind of, I guess it's before, Mel Gibson kind of, took the role as director and kind of started inserting his own views in there. But anyway, but yeah, great. Yeah, you really remember. I'll have to rewatch that because it's been quite some time. But yeah, he did that in Dead Poet Society, which I don't know why I didn't. I don't think I put that on the list, but I should have. But maybe I just remembered that I'd eventually get around to mentioning it anyway. But I do genuinely, despite kind of the corniness of the whole thing, it is such an earnest movie too. It just has this allure of just youth and like the finding all these kind of misfits in like a Catholic kind of school. They feel like, so like I guess it's a Catholic kind of run strict austere kind of school that it's like very and you do find a little bit of that term of like kind of not snobs versus slobs, but that too. But I don't want to say it's anything like that lowbrow or like a kind of like Revenge of the Nerds or kind of comedies or Fast Times at Remote High kind of thing. But it did, while it wasn't late 80s, right? I think 89 came out. Ethan Hawke's one of his first roles, I think. And even though he's kind of a minor, he's not quite, his character is meant to be almost a little milquetoast and not that memorable, but he really does make a, kind of a good impression. Just probably why he was like kind of got cast in later and later stuff. But that Robert Sean Leonard's character just had this like infectious kind of energy to him, and like I'm at a loss for the character's name, but like they just had the group, like there wasn't, like you could tell, like even though it could have gone into the kind of like more kind of raunchier type of thing that a lot of 80s movies, especially about youth and stuff, it you could tell like the people in there had like some dignity not to go into the lowbrow potty humor a lot of the time, and they just kept to this like the idealist kind of poetical side of it, of experiencing poetry and like, and just a simple pleasures of like free expression. Carpe diem, seize the day is the kind of the main kind of recurring themes of the movie. So yeah, moving on. There's stuff. Speaking of that, kind of unabashed kind of sincerity. Little Miss Sunshine. This is one of those movies I kind of have an issue with. The acting is great. It's phenomenal. Paul Dano's one of his earlier roles. He had a time to really shine in that, I think, because as I recall, he kind of got to start kind of playing the nerdy friend of Emil Hirsch and The Girl Next Door, and I think that was even though that was aforementioned kind of one of those movies that's like, ooh, it's trying to be kind of so memorable, and it just ends up being kind of like in bad taste or whatever. But I felt like some of it was, but I don't know, I didn't see the whole thing. I'm gonna be honest, because I couldn't make it through it. Just not my cup of tea. But Paul Damon's, even like when he was cast as kind of just like a sideman, nerdy type of character, like he really did kind of shows that he has like a presence on screen, and then he shows that definitely even when he doesn't speak in this movie, which did remind me a little bit of Tilda Swinton in A Bigger Splash, which I think I mentioned. This putting writing a restraint on a character like Paul Dano in this. He is he's has a vow of silence until he can actually, I think, get into this. I think he wants to get into the Air Force or some kind of military academy so he can fly planes or something like that. He has high hopes for that, and then there's a moment when he loses. He finds out he's colorblind. Because he tries doing the test, and then the vision test, and then he just jumps out of the car and just starts screaming at the top of his lungs, and he's just like. And then from that moment on, I think, he's like, he just, gives up on the whole thing. And, Steve Carell too in that movie, even though I hesitate to call Steve Carell quite a good dramatic actor, because I'm thinking of Foxcatcher and kind of like how I felt like it was a little bit too cartoonish, and he was playing it like a little bit too much like, ooh, he's so like John DuPont, I think, he's so weird and he's so just offbeat, and it's like in real life, John DuPont, like I've seen somebody did like a side-by-side comparison of both of them, Steve Carell and John DuPont together, in showing a documentary that came out somewhat recently, and like how different, like, just, DuPont in real life was just he was kind of strange and a bit awkward, but he wasn't like objectively so. He wasn't like, showing he wasn't just bleeding kind of sociopath or like lack of remorse, like he was just cartoonish. And I felt like Steve Carell, as much as I, like I don't put him on this high pedestal, but I do have respect for him, and I think he can, like Little Miss Sunshine is like an example of him kind of showing a new, like an understated performance. He's not trying to chew the scenery, but I felt like this was a little bit, he's trying to chew the scenery a little bit too much. I mean, not John Travolta in Battlefield Earth level, but it's a little bit too much. But I guess another thing. It's not like about dramatic, like, comedic actors can't do dramatic roles. Like I have a few of my favorite movies, probably. Like I think I mentioned Punch Drunk Love, Adam Sandler's kind of thing, and there was somebody saying like there was another one that was about 9/11, I think, that had Adam Sandler and and Meyerowitz stories too. Another Noah Baumbach film, which I do. Speaking of Baumbach, I do have Marriage Story on here, which is very. It was very kind of like a little bit dry. It's just like showing kind of showing a period in this man's life, and man and lady, obviously, Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver's character is both, they settle divorce settlement. It's like an ugly divorce settlement. They're trying to find a way of navigating it with their son, who's I think 8 years old in the movie, and he's that's the main thing that's drawing them together. And they still have conflicted feelings towards each other. They're trying to, last vestiges, I guess there were, and that's what the opening scene was. And why the opening scene I loved so much, because it was showing them both. I guess it's cold opening, so doesn't really tell you right off the bat that the voiceover is them in therapy until it reveals it. But it shows them citing what they both like about each other, and it's like going through the list, and it's like very very endearing, I think, and that's kind of I think I think people were too kind of quick to take sides, from what I heard of just people, the way they people digested the movie. They kind of took sides or whatever. They're like, oh, Scarlett Johansson's, she's crazy in this movie. She's like, oh gosh, like he avoided a nightmare there, and it's just like, like some people like that, or other people are like, oh, Adam Driver was like a controlling, control freak and blah blah blah. It's just like, dude, it's not. I'm just saying, dude, nowadays, because that's part of my vernacular. Anyway, but no, it's. I just thought that's not the point. The point of the movie wasn't to make. I don't think he was Baumbach was writing it with the intention of just being side with this person. He was just kind of just saying this is a marriage. This is something that happened to fall apart because they did have differing things, and maybe Adam Driver's character. Yes, he was more conscientious. I guess he was more maybe something very he was very maybe obsessive about certain things, having that might translate towards bad traits, but maybe Scarlett Johansson was interested in the same things he was, or the same kind of high art kind of things, and was more interested in the immediate expression of acting, I suppose, and this it wasn't as conscientious, that kind of and I don't think that was any fodder for you to hate either of them. It's just supposed to be they're both flawed in their own ways, and they both that just happened that their marriage they couldn't I think in the long term both of them shouldn't have gotten married, but that's who am I to say? I don't know anything about I don't know anything. I don't have anything to say about marriage, but I just don't from a personal perspective, I'm so maybe cautious and wary of that, especially in like, and especially since it was supposed to be across the coast from like, California, I think, like Hollywood to New York. It's like so different. And again, that's, like I understand that there's a lot going on in a different kind of scene, I guess, in New York, kind of, than there is in LA. But, I guess I do have a lot more to say on that. I just can't quite voice what exactly. Again, this isn't one of those movies that I actually do have an issue. I actually just think it's a great movie, period. But especially the scene where they both, the very, I guess, iconic scene where they both kind of start yelling at each other, and and I don't love it because it's like, ooh, it's satisfying to see people yelling and finally, voicing it, and, part where he punches a hole in the wall. That's so, but it is, it is just because there was like an energy, kind of like a phlegmatic calm across the trajectory of most of the movie, and then all of a sudden it was just like, boom. It's just like they both start crying and embracing after that. So it's like it was like this weird sublimation type of thing. I'm not vouching to say that this is a healthy way of expressing your thoughts, but it was, in some way, that's in the context of the movie, it like something was like made sense about it. I don't know. Stuff like Amadeus, which came out 1984. Milos Forman. I've yet to see any more of his film. Aside, I think I watched the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but it's been so long that I've got to rewatch it. But I've heard, it's obviously an iconic kind of 70s movie, right? But yeah, I would love to get, watch more of his stuff. There's he's a Czech director, I think. Czechoslovakian. It's actually no longer existence, but only like kind of the Bohemian, I think, states of Czechoslovakia are kind of all in the same area. But yeah, he's this movie is one of those, again, kind of iconic movies that everybody's got to watch at least sometime in their life, or the kinds that you might find on the AFI, like 100 movies you got to watch before you die kind of thing. But it was partially for those reasons, and then partially just for the me seeing scenes from it a while back of just that dichotomy between Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Antonio Salieri was just too good. It was just the classic kind of Mozart had almost this body kind of, and it was exaggerated for the movie, and it was dramatic again, kind of like in how The Social Network plays out, like almost like a really into the finesse of jazz. I know that people like actual jazz musicians reviewed it and said like it's pretty inaccurate, like those are the score and the writing, or like the music in it wasn't quite jazz. It was like jazz is more about improv and stuff, and like Fletcher in the movie, J.K. Simmons' character was just, it's just all about controlling each note. Like he would have fared better as a classical musician, I think, because that's more about notation, sight reading, being prepared, like knowing what to play at the exact time, whereas jazz isn't about any of that. Actually, jazz is about the opposite. It's about not knowing. It's about like there are no wrong notes in jazz. I think I don't know if that was Dizzy Gillespie or Miles Davis that said that, but could have been something completely different. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot in the movie that that didn't have to do with jazz that I actually did like, which is just the dynamic between Miles Teller's character and the teacher throughout the whole entire thing was just like there's so many like it was showing like just the ugliness, like how ugly things can get, like how desperate he did get, and, like certain points where I kind of signed off, when he would assert himself in his own way and like suddenly get like brash himself, that shadow basically would come out, and I just thought it was pretty hard to watch in some parts, like it just all too I hope nothing is as unhealthy as that, because you'd still get like people who are like, man, Fletcher in that movie, he was so, yeah, who cares if he was, if that, you know, if he was like psychotic, like those, it's pretty much like what you got to do. Like if he got the best out of his students, then he's pretty much good, though. He's, you know, he's pretty much, you know, he's absolved, or, you know, himself. And I don't think that at all. I think if anybody, like a fraction of what like Fletcher was like in that movie, and we've all came across like, you know, teachers or instructors, peers that have gone too far, you know, that have taken things that have just, you know, been impatient, or at the very least, just you know, discordant and hard to work with, or but yeah, I think there's just no room for that, I think, in music. I think music should be free form. I think teaching any form of creativity, I think, should be open, left you know, unmitigated to a degree. Not like, I think like there should be some, you know, like you know, guiding, you know, how helping people become at their best, you know, performers or whatever. And I think at no point does yelling and berating anybody help them. Yes, there's the weird inadvertent things where you hear about bullies that bully kids. Steve Jobs is the reason he got, you know, because it's probably because he was bullied in high school, right? Or that people even in some weird way, unveiled way, kind of bullied him in his adulthood or whatever by just like making fun of his products and stuff, and he bought better. It's like, you know, but at that, I don't believe that, because I think that it's you know, philosophically, or, you know, it's basically a consequentialist kind of cop out, right? You're basically you're only saying that because the end result happened to be somebody who, after getting bullied, might have went home and vowed to work on their, let's say, you know, their peer-reviewed college paper or something until finest, and they became a genius, and they read every single book they could on coding, and became an engineering computer genius or whatever. That's only in spite of it. The fact that they didn't commit suicide because of that, it's monumentally screwed up human behavior, like that capitulation of ugly, brutish behavior, because the very fact that brutish people is somehow inadvertently, unwittingly caused them. And I do see, you know, in a weird way what they mean. I get that some amount of pushing and shove, and you let people, you know, like, or people talk about like the need for rough play. I think as a child, I think that's important to an extent, to have within reason for kids to kind of, you know, like you learn by you know, sensory touch, and you learn that when you touch a stove, for example, and whoa, that's not good, you know, like your brain is you know, there's in like muscle memory, there's not a such thing as muscle memory, I don't think. It's not like your muscle, like, it's not like literally your muscles have little brains in them, or or even neurons. It's just, I guess, sense receptors. I guess the dendrite sense receptors or whatever kind of goes out, sends signals to your brain, and your brain, it's like kind of but it's not, I'm not sure, but I think it's like, it's more so just kind of repetition of, you know, touching and, you know, grasping, the tactile kind of thing. It's all of it stays within this, you know, the touch, not your brain. As far as I know, from the hot take that I've heard. But yeah, I think like there's no need for like bullying people, forcing them into like genuflecting and serving, you know, I don't think at all. In a military, maybe, because like the all of a sudden the context, more the moral relativistic kind of scheme has changed. It's all of a sudden you're training people to kill, and that's different. And I think like, well, obviously I think the military is bonkers. I think war is bonkers, and I probably advocate more for pacifism, you know, and you might find that make me spineless, so I was like, great. But I think like, yes, there's the natural way things in the world kind of play out is toward a certain percentage of, especially males, and to want to war and to want to kind of partake in some kind of battle. And if they're not going to get that or within other people, they might find in the army, the military at large. So I think, yeah, you'll find that but I hope that kind of military kind of thing will just remain as, like, for the most part, harmless guards, really, rather than this bloated, distended thing that we have nowadays. So that's just my 2 cents, though. So yeah, that's because I know for a fact it's gonna do that. Okay, I'll tie this up. Last Temptation of Christ is a great movie. Kind of got me thinking that Martin Scorsese isn't just, he's propped up as kind of like, one of the great kind of cinematic masterminds. And I think, like, there was he was modest enough to kind of let his own his own point of view, and inserting himself into the narrative, kind of his own views, like he did with The Taxi Driver, co-written by Paul Schrader, or I think screenwritten by Paul Schrader, who actually I think did, like, this thing on Mishima, this Yukio Mishima documentary that I'd like to watch eventually. But like, they're great on they're capable of creating some pretty, I think Taxi Drivers, I think I mentioned it already, I would definitely say is, like, within, within a 10 to 20, maybe 30 movies that I genuinely love. But I feel like I should be cautionary with it. Like, I should be cautionary in the way I love it. It's more on just like if you walk away with it, if you keep in mind that Travis Bickle is obviously unhealthy, and that he's mentally kind of gone, and that he's suffering from weird versions of, weird expressions of post-traumatic stress disorder, then you're like, okay, yeah, he's clearly, like, I can identify with the loneliness aspect of what it's like to be a guy, youngish guy, trying to make your way through, especially through the seedy kind of underbelly of New York, that, and, like, the fact that, like, he thinks he kind of needs, in order to prove himself, he kind of needs to be violent and volatile and belligerent with people, and that's the way he thinks that a man should be. And he goes off, and when he does this, it's more than it's like consequentialism again. The way he takes these lives, and it's like, even though it's a seedy, horrible guy like Sport, I think Harvey Keitel does a brilliant job as this. He's such this scummy guy. But yeah, like, the way he kind of uses that as an example, like, look how horrible this is. I need to rescue, Jodie Foster's character. I need to, like, prove a point, and then, by the end of it, like, that's why it's kind of left to interpretation, right? Like, is it a dream that finally his, the kind of his love interest earlier in the movies finally, like, gladly, eagerly, watching his eye in every move in the back seat of the car, like, eyeing him up at, like, the dame in every, movie. I think, I don't think that was unintentional when it was, like, left in the dark, because I think it was meant to be, like, yeah, it was probably in his head, because he's, like, I think he's, it was not a flat arc, but I don't, it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't think I see somebody like Travis Bickle changing for the better quite. I think he's meant to be kind of like a, what's the word, to kind of relapse a lot. So, but like, I obviously you could be hopeful, but yeah. So The Last Temptation of Christ was really great because obviously William Dafoe is a great Harvey Keitel again. Just kind of like the what if isms of, like, Christianity, and it really wasn't all that, like, as nearly, if any, anti-Christian or anti-religion at all. I think it was a lot of Catholics or a lot of fundamentalist Christians disliked, thought it was like a apostasy to be like, oh, Jesus felt temptation, like he felt. But the novel by I think it was Nikolai, or darn, I have it right here. Means I've yet to read it, but Nikos Kazantakis, I think. But yeah, I think it's meant to be a inquiry into what would happen if Christ felt, if these things happen, like if he felt temptation or if he succumbed to the flesh. It's not meant to be a celebration of that, like, ooh, like Jesus would be going around purposely doing that, but it's like more like if he felt some urge to, like he said, with like wanting to, get back at those who denounced Magdalene. He wanted to, for her, prostitution, and just the way it was filmed and everything in the desert. Him, like with that, taking out his heart. It's just so, the kind of magic realism too. Like I just thought was great. Like when he was like near the end, had an impression at all. But yeah, like Winona Ryder's kind of offbeat kind of character, like outcast, didn't seem too on the nose, but later on Tim Burton kind of seemed to be dwelling a little bit too much, kind of rehashing some of the same things he had, like Big Fish. I did have some issues with like the trying to be kind of way too whimsical, for my taste at least. Obviously, it's I do remember growing up with that movie in my periphery and genuinely really liking it, but I feel like I've outgrown some of the whimsicality of it, but yeah, I think if that's a word, I think I mentioned What We Do in the Shadows, but I don't know when the camera turned off. But yeah, all of those, like, yeah, I enjoy much more the show iteration of that, with like Nandor the Relentless, the Laszlo, like played by Matt Berry. He's a favorite of mine. He was on Dark Place, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is great. Only 2 seasons or 1 season, 6 episodes, but I've rewatched it so many times since I was a teenager. It was just completely just mockumentary. So they got saying like, you and he were buddies, weren't you? Like just that kind of like voice way too low, overdubbed kind of thing, 80s thing. Yeah, a lot of his stuff, like Toast of London is also great too. But yeah, like his stuff thing on Portlandia too. Portlandia is also great. Probably shows up a lot too as my kind of favorite kind of comedy styles too. But yeah, like a lot of that. But I feel like it lost steam a little bit, like in the the third or fourth, maybe 5th season. Just because I felt like it lost sight of the initial kind of thing it was lampooning and satirizing, like the kind of snobs and offbeat, eccentric characters that not only you find in Portlandia, but just writ large, not just in Oregon or, up kind of in Oregon or Washington or anywhere, but, on the East or West Coast, but, pretty much throughout the world too, just kind of the kind of people you get who are like the hipster-esque kind of people you get, but yeah, and it's a light commentary, it's a light satirization. It's not like haha, like these people are horrible, like let's just mock them, but it is kind of a post-irony, I think, in the sense that Fred Armisen and Carrie Brownson are probably making fun of themselves too in many ways too, but yeah, I think it just lost a little bit of its edge in season 4 or 5, but still great nonetheless. Anyway, so I think that wraps it up. Definitely talked way too long. Probably gonna have to cut this into multiple different sections, like probably 5 different sections, for it to be somewhat palatable. But anyway, yeah. So let me know what you think. Catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.